All right, Joe, welcome back to the podcast. We are here to talk to guys about training and spiritual fitness and just identifying some of those foundational elements when guys start talking about developing a lifestyle of putting Christ first. And I want to start this episode by just taking a look around me, Joe. Where am I right now? For those guys that aren't watching on YouTube, what do you see around me right now?
You've got the best office of anybody I know. You're in your garage with the most complete tool set found outside of Home Depot, I think.
I don't know about that. That would be great. There are a lot of tools back there. There's also a lot of random junk. It's a garage.
I love that too.
So there's a lot of random junk back there. A lot of great tools. But yeah, so here's the thing I want to tell you. In this garage, I hold with me the most dangerous thing that I own right now. And if you looked in my garage behind me, there's a lot of good things to guess as to what that is. All right. I've got all these tools, like you said, back there. You can't even see everything that's back there. I got chainsaws. I've got, flame. I got like all kinds of, I got a crossbow back there.
Yeah.
I mean, I've never used it. I've only shot at a target. I'm not a terrible hunter, but I do have a crossbow. I got all kinds of crazy stuff in this garage that is dangerous. But let me tell you, I want to point out to guys, the most dangerous thing that I have in my garage right now, it's right here, Joe. It's my phone. It's my phone. And that's probably hopefully obvious to some guys that, oh yeah, I guess our phones are pretty dangerous. Maybe it's a little too much for some guys. They're like, no, come on. But I don't know. I mean, I'm looking around the room you sit in right now, Joe. It looks pretty safe, actually.
Yeah.
There's some empty walls behind you. But I don't know. What's the most dangerous thing in the room where you're at? Do you agree? Is your phone dangerous at all?
Yeah, absolutely. I have no crossbows that I'm hiding here. I'm in the UK, so you can't own guns, and pocket knives are frowned upon. So it's a pretty safe environment generally. But we do carry one object that's really dangerous, and that nobody ever, checks you with. You don't have to have a permit to have one, but it gets so many people into trouble. And yeah, so I think the most dangerous object I certainly have in my house is my phone.
And really, it's all about perspective, right? I mean, you could say, a weapon like a crossbow or a flame torch or something like that is super dangerous, but it's all about perspective as to what you're trying to do or where you're headed or what your aim is. And some of this is, okay, what's the most dangerous thing when I start talking about growing in godliness? What's the thing that gets me, in my way most often? When I start talking about my relationship with my kids, my relationship with my wife, when I start talking about all these things that are actually meaningful in my life, you have to look at, oh man, my phone definitely gets in the way. It definitely can be a dangerous item that prevents me from becoming that godly man that I'm aiming to be. And I know that when we start talking about guys handling their phones, it can become kind of this, beating a dead horse thing where, oh, everybody talks about that. We've talked about that already several times on the podcast. It's in all of our programs. But the thing is, if you're the kind of guy that wants to train in spiritual fitness, you can't do that without explicitly talking about what are you doing with your phone? What is going on there? How are you using this thing? Because you will never actually be able to have a healthy lifestyle that you're talking about without examining everything, including what I think is one of the most dangerous things that we carry around with us. So I want you to kind of maybe open guys' eyes to see, okay, why this seems neutral, Joe. Honestly, right. If I look at this, I'm like, this could be good, could be bad. I got a calendar on this thing that I need to work. I've got, there's a lot of good email, banking. I do all that kind of stuff on here. It just doesn't seem like that big of a deal. It seems like a neutral device. So convince me that this isn't a neutral device.
Yeah. I mean, one of the oddest things is that we do call it a phone, because that's one of the things that we do least with it, right? Is actually make phone calls. I think we just have to change how we think about it. And I think the first thing I'd say to guys is just realize that, you've got a strip club in your pocket. But the thing about the strip club in your pocket is it's really embarrassing to park your car at an actual strip club and walk in and be there in public and think, what if I did see somebody here that knew me? You can go visit that digital one and nobody's ever going to know because you've probably got no accountability software or anything. So you can get in and out. And the thing is, let's be honest, it's not a strip club. It's something that is a whole lot worse than you're going to find at any strip club that's accessible. And that's sitting in your pocket with no supervision, and you know your own heart. And when you realize that, it's not just a phone, it's a ticket. It's a free ticket to go places that you know you've probably been and that you desperately need to not go back to.
When you phrase it that way, I've got a strip club in my pocket. That does make it seem super dangerous. This is no longer a neutral device. And I think it points us to a lot of times when we think about our phones, we think about the most dangerous thing is the time spent, right? Number of hours spent on our phone and that kind of stuff. But what you're pointing towards is not necessarily time, but the things you can do and may even have done on your phone. The type of activities are dangerous in and of themselves.
Yeah, and it's not just we could talk about pornography. That's not the only issue. It's like it's not just a strip club. You've also got a casino in your pocket. And there are a lot of guys getting into gambling addictions. Starts real small, with steps that you wouldn't think would lead anywhere. But again, you don't have to fly to Vegas. You can just take out your phone and you can, you can get into different types of betting and all kinds of things that guys stumble into. And that's not it. So if that's the sort of extreme stuff, you're saying, okay, I'm not into porn, gambling's not my thing. You could just look at your phone and think, this is a future addiction in its own right. I mean, we all know, we hear about dopamine all the time. Every time I pick it up, I get that hit. Every time I get the hit, I get the urge for another hit. And I mean, if you just look at guys, if you try to take their phone from them for any length of time, what you see is these guys, they don't know how to handle the absence of their phone. Like they don't know what to do with space. They don't know what to do with quiet. And, if we were in a healthy society, there would be, iPhone addiction groups that would be meeting. And, all of us would probably, need to raise our hand and say, look, I'm addicted to my iPhone. I can't be away from it. And so again, this is sitting in our pocket, this little dopamine fix that's going to make us unable to be quiet, have solitude, and have time with prayer or be in the presence of another human being. It's just sitting there and we're calling it just a phone.
Yeah. It's interesting because we do I think immediately, well, this phone isn't that big a deal. It's a neutral device. But when you play it out that way, I can see the obvious danger that's there for guys. But I think that one of the big problems is just that naivete that comes with it, right? Aren't guys just naive to the fact of what a phone actually is and what it actually can do?
Yeah. And, just one last image I throw up for guys to think about is, just if you think of the man that you want to be, that you'd love to be, to go 10 years, 20 years down the road, a man who's got, real wisdom, a man who's got rich, life-giving relationships with his kids, with his spouse, a man of character. If you were to think, what is the thing, what is the magic pill that's going to keep me from growing into all of these things? It's going to distract me such that I never develop the wisdom. It's going to make me into somebody who can't focus my mind. It's going to keep me, like you said earlier, from the relationships I want with my kids and my spouse. It's this thing in my pocket. And so, do I want this thing to govern my life? Because that's what it's built to do. It's not built to primarily be my tool. It's built to make me into a tool so that it can get me to the advertising, get me, to all of these corporations that can make money off of me. And so we just have to be so careful and recognize that there's always this kind of downward gravity with something like a phone. And if we're not thoughtful about it, we're going to find ourselves eventually giving in, not resisting. And then it's going to begin to have a kind of foothold over us that we don't know how to escape.
Here's one of the problems I have with talking about smartphones and guys having addiction to the phones and stuff like that. I can see, especially now, the way you're talking about this convinces me that it is a dangerous device, right? I know that it's a dangerous device, that there's even evils that can happen within it, and in my own hands, there's bad things that I can do with it. And maybe you'll have to help me here a little bit, Joe, because I don't know any Greek or Hebrew or anything. Like, what's the Greek word for smartphone? Because I like the Bible talks a lot about the evils I need to avoid and the things that are dangerous for, and yet. Again, I don't know Greek and Hebrew. Maybe it's there, but there's nothing in the Bible on smartphones. So how do we instruct guys biblically about phone use?
I think there's several things guys should think about. One of the passages that they will not think to read or connect with their phone is if you go to Isaiah 44, and it's one of these passages where Isaiah is talking about the foolishness of idolatry. And it's one of these pictures of, people who go and, whether it's a piece of metal or it's a piece of a tree, they cut it down, and part of it they use as fuel. And then part of it they take and it gets carved into this idol. What's really interesting is toward the end, I'll just read a couple of verses. It says, half of it, this wood, he burns in the fire. Over the half he eats his meat, he roasts it and is satisfied. He also warms himself and says, aha, I am warm. I have seen the fire. And the rest of it he makes into a god, his idol, and he falls down to it and worships it. And he prays to it and says, deliver me, for you are my God. Now, here's what's interesting, is the way in which what really makes it into the God is when he falls down and physically lies prostrate before this piece of wood. And if you were just to bring in somebody from 2,000 years ago, like some sort of Aztec, and if he was walking around just observing us, what would he think that we're bowing down to? What is it, what physical object is constantly directing us? And again, what Isaiah says, this idolater says, deliver me, for you are my God. And to what extent, are we trying to be liberated from our boredom, from honestly the presence of God, or from our anxiety and fear? This phone, we lean on it emotionally, mentally. And so again, when you realize it's that, idolatry, it's not just a heart issue, it's a habit issue. It's what you do with yourself. It's what's governing your lifestyle. It's what's directing your mind. And once you see idolatry in those terms, again, this phone looks a little bit different.
Yes, it does. Yeah. And Joe, I had no idea that Isaiah talked about smartphones. You taught me something new today. But no, I see the point there that you're making there. The big picture of idolatry. Gosh, I would hate if someone, from anywhere else stepped into my house, my life, and looked at what are the things that Evan is bound physically. When you brought in the physical element there, what physically does Evan's life revolve around? What is he holding and bowing to? That's a scary, scary thought. And honestly, I think it changes a little bit of maybe even how I introduced this. I talked about how the most dangerous item in my garage is my phone. What you just said maybe makes me think the most dangerous item in my garage is me, right? like if I just left my phone in here and I walked into the house, I definitely have the ability to take anything else and make it an idol, right? So there's something about me and the way I'm choosing to bow down to this device and the way I'm choosing to use it. That's like, there's a lot of danger when you mix me, sinner, who is an idiot, right, with a device that has all the capabilities in the world.
Yeah. And, I think we pull it another direction, because it's not just that it's pulling us the wrong way, but it's keeping us from what we should be doing. So I would really encourage guys when they think about their phone to, they know the parable of the talents, that these three servants, each of them are given 1 5, 1 2, 1 talent. And, the master goes away and then comes back to find out what they've done with it. And if we just think about ourselves, like what are the talents that, Jesus has given us? And if he were to show up and, want us to give some sort of reply, honestly, I think we would be the steward who would be, staring at our phone and being like, wait, did you say something to me? Like, was I meant to be doing something? Because I've just been distracted. I was looking at my phone. I didn't realize that I was meant to be doing something right now. And, we've got these talents, we've got accountability before the Lord Jesus. We want to hear, I think, as men, well done, good and faithful servant. But for that to happen, we can't let ourselves just be mindlessly distracted. And we've got to think about what Jesus wants us to be doing with our days.
That's good. All right. So I think you've convinced me, Joe. I'm getting rid of my phone. Like, why have phone? Honestly, for me, I've talked about this before. It doesn't take much convincing. Like, my goal in life is to be Amish and just to, let's make cabinets till the sun goes down. And, I'm going to start today shopping for bonnets for my wife. Like, I'm going all in on the Amish lifestyle. Let's just get rid of phones completely because they're no good. Is that what you're convincing me of?
Well, yeah, I think, okay. So, we need to reach a point so we can recognize that, it's not evil. It's not evil. Okay. Guys need to feel, though, they do need to feel the extent to which they're in danger. And so I'm just going to pour a little bit more fuel on that, on that fear before we move on. And just the other thing I would just say to guys, it's so important, is just to realize there really is nothing, there is no meaningless action. Like, we're always developing our character, and every choice we make is cumulative. And so, for example, with your mind, every time that you just give in and just allow yourself to be just distracted and totally let off course, what happens is eventually that results in a distracted mindset, a habituated mind that's unable to focus its attention. And a lot of guys know they're there. They can recognize that they really struggle. They're sitting in church. They cannot follow a sermon. They're on their knees. They cannot continue to pray. And if they're going to ask themselves, how do I grow out of this? Well, it's going to begin by, again, thinking that I can't just let myself follow this phone wherever it wants to lead me. When I feel these urges to be distracted, those are opportunities. Every little choice could make me stronger. So over time, I could become the kind of man that can pray, that can meditate, that can listen and apply a sermon. And we've just got to ask each day, which man do we want to become? More distracted or more focused? And a lot of it's going to be determined by our phone.
That's good. So I think if I'm hearing you right, you're saying every time we pick up our phone, or the way we interact with our phone, is feeding some sort of habit of some sort, that it's becoming a longer term decision of how we handle ourselves big picture.
Exactly. The man that we want to grow into, and how we use our phone is going to be a piece of that, determining who we become.
I like that because it does change the conversation a little bit. Again, I've got like I do have a thing on my phone that tracks how much time, right, I spend on my phone. It tells me, every Sunday at 9:00, I get a notification saying, here's how much time you spent on your phone every day this week and what you did with all it. And that's helpful. Like, it is helpful for me to know how much time I spent on my phone. But what I can't find is an app that tells me how my phone use, what direction it's pointing me in life, what destination I'm headed towards because of my phone use in the past week. If that app is out there, I'd love it, because that's the bigger picture I think that guys need to examine, right? Is, how did my phone use this week put me closer to the destination that I'm headed as a man, that I want to go? Exactly. That is probably the better way. And it sounds like what you're talking about, that we need to start thinking about phones. So then, okay, I'm going to ask again, because I'm almost like, look, bashing phones is like one of my favorite pastimes. Like I'm all in on bashing smartphones, social media. Let's do it. Like, I'm all in. Let's go. But I do think that maybe there's some room for good in phones. I don't know, but maybe I need some convincing though. Convince me that there's something good.
Let's just be honest. And every guy listening to this is going to have the same answer. Can you live without a smartphone? And the answer is probably no. Like, this is the part of our life. And so this is where we have to be able to do, I talked about that downward gravity with phones and technology. There is a kind of jujitsu where you use that weight productively in a direction that you want to go. And so this is where, with cross train, we often talk about guys need to be Jedis with their phones. And I think that's a helpful image, because whenever I think of a Jedi, I think of a lightsaber. Yeah, that's what they carry. And if I think of actually holding a lightsaber, my first thought is that would be so cool. Second thought is that would be so scary, because if I just accidentally, go the wrong direction, that's my foot that just got cut off. Who knows how I could hurt myself with a lightsaber. So I'm going to have to learn how to handle this. If it's not going to be a source of danger, but it's going to be a tool, and a tool that's actually going to be wielded for good, I'm going to have to train like a Jedi. I'm going to have to learn skills. I'm going to have self-control. I'm going to have to be able to handle it. And so that's what guys, they have to see. Yes, their phone is dangerous. You can hurt yourself with it. But with the right character, And with the right skills, it can be wielded for good. But that's not just a hack. That's actually something that has to be developed and sustained and trained over time to use well.
That's good. And that image of a lightsaber really is helpful because it removes that thought of the phone being neutral and it just being, it tells you that both good and bad can happen here. But we can then use it for good. There's some good ways for guys to have a phone, because I have seen, you said, can you live without a smartphone? Man, I think we're proving more and more these days that you just can't. I even see there's guys occasionally that because of sin that they've fallen into, they get the flip phones, right, for a period of time. But honestly, it just doesn't last that long, because what they notice is it is pretty much impossible to do life these days with a phone that just has numbers on it. Like, it's just not even practical at this point. So if we're gonna have the thing already, then let's find ways to use it for good. So all right, we've got 5 rules for guys that want to become Jedis with their phone. And I want to go over those quickly, because I think this will be a helpful way to outline for guys. How do you become that kind of guy? How do you become the kind of guy that sees your phone as getting you closer to the destination that you want to actually head towards? So let's go through these. Rule number 1 for becoming a Jedi with your phone is just to figure out what a phone is good for and then limit its use accordingly. So what would you say about that?
Yeah, you have to really answer this question. And honestly, it's not good for most of what you're using it for. What is good for distraction, and it is good to feed lust and vanity. It's really good at that, but that's not how you want to use it. And so what is it useful for? And, some things I would say is, well, I'm amazed. I can listen to the best minds, on planet Earth whenever I want and be stimulated through podcasts, audiobooks, sermons. I mean, it's amazing how you can fill otherwise empty moments with the content that you got on your phone. I mean, it's great for that. It's great. I've got a Bible memory app anywhere I am. If I'm in a checkout line and I've got 10 minutes, and I'd be frustrated otherwise, I can pull it out and I can be memorizing, a few verses of scripture. It's really amazing for keeping up with friends that are far away. I'm in Scotland. I've got a lot of family and friends in the US, and we are able to stay close in a way that wouldn't have been possible. I mean, it's really good for that. And about the only other thing that I think is really good for is the simplest of communication. So if I forget to get the milk and Anna's out, I can send a text. For that kind of communication, it's good. Those are the kind of things it's good for. Most of the other stuff, it's not good for.
Yeah. I think it's one of these things we have to ask as guys. In fact, I would say one of the most beneficial conversations I had with some of my friends over the past year was, I don't know, maybe it was about a year ago, that we sat down one week and we said, you know what, next week when we get together, let's have prepared an answer to this question. What are the good uses for all the screens in my life? So we did phones, we did TVs, we did, and I was amazed at some of the answers that came back. And I was amazed at what happened in my own heart as I had to ask that question. Okay, there is good in this. Now mine it out. Where is it? Where is the good? Identify it, and then talk to your friends about it. Say, this is the good, and I want to do these things. But even within that, I think the limits part is helpful too, because I found myself, there's good in, like you said, there's good stuff to listen to with, whether it be sermons or audiobooks or podcasts. But I found myself, like last year, realizing after my podcast app, the app that I use to listen to podcasts, it told me, you cannot subscribe to this podcast. After I just tried to subscribe to one, you have reached your limit. And apparently they have an internal limit, because I hadn't signed up for their, paid version. You can only subscribe for 100 podcasts. And it was at that moment that I realized I subscribed to 100 podcasts. That's obnoxious, Evan. That's obnoxious. I don't need them. So there is good, but at some point it's like, do I really need 100 of them? Yeah. So, identifying those, okay, wait, there needs to be a limit here. Maybe I've tried to make a practice once a year. I cut the number of podcasts I subscribe to in half. Just no matter what, just cut them in half, because you don't need them all. There's good in them, but you've got to be picky and choosy about what's the best. So I think it's helpful. Yeah. Identify what's the good and then find the healthy limits. Rule number 2, when possible, get your phone off your body. Get your phone off your body.
Yeah. Guys, what do you want? You want real relationships with actual people that you can touch and listen to, or do you want to just check the scores yet again? For whatever sports you're following. If it's on us, let's just be honest. We're too weak. We're weak. Yeah. We're gonna pick it up. We're gonna look at the screen instead of the eyes of our children. If it's off your body, you're gonna be present in different ways. And so, have those moments, because like you said, even good podcasts, can you have moments of silence where there's no noise? And so get it away when you can, be present where you are, feed into real relationships with actual people that you could reach out and touch. Let's not lose these things. And the phone, we know, is a threat to these things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm more and more convinced that we need to go back to like the early days of the cell phone and turn it into a car phone. I think at times we need car phone. Like, think of it as a car. Like, there are places that I go, I don't need my phone when I go in there. Like, if I take my family out to a restaurant to eat, why am I leave it in the car? Make it a car phone. Don't bring it inside with you. You're only going to check it.
It's not a babysitter.
Yeah. It's not a babysitter. That's right. So I think a good question even for guys to ask is, when you pull up to somewhere, can my phone be a car phone right now? Can I just leave it here? Do I actually need it? Is it integral to the thing I'm about to do? If not, just make it a car phone, man. Go back to the 90s. It's a better life. But all right, rule number 3. Don't start and end your day with your phone. That's a hard one.
It's a hard one. But do we want to just talk about God being first, or do we want to live in such a way that God is first? Give him your best. Start your day at his feet. End your day with him. We've talked in previous episodes about morning routines. We've talked about going to sleep. There's the whole functional, practical side of just helping your body rest. But then there's the whole spiritual side as well of, in the old days, people had morning and evening prayer. They said their morning and evening prayers. When the newspaper came out, there were a lot of people who were worried that the newspaper was going to disrupt the morning prayers of ordinary people. I mean, what would those people from 200 years ago think if they came today and watched us at the start and end of our day? So let's figure out how to use these times to set us up for the life that we really want to live as men.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah. There are good things you can do with your phone at the beginning and end of your day, but there are better things that you can do with your life than those good things. Like, because I'm not going to deny that there are good things that you can do with your phone when you wake up, when you go to sleep, but there's better. There's just better out there, especially for the man you want to become. So yeah, starting with prayer and dedication. Yeah. All right. Rule number 4, limit texting to the most basic communication needs. This sounds closer to Amish, Joe. I'm in on that. But limited to the most basic needs.
Well, let's start with the obvious. As men, we're not good at communicating. When we use our faces and our voices and our bodies, our wives don't know what we're saying, even when we're there. When we try to say on the text that we're mad and why we're mad, like, it never communicates well. There's no nuance. Emojis don't substitute. I mean, unless it's bare facts, like, again, I need you to pick up my child, from such and such a place. Like, the phone is good for that. Yes. But if you're trying to express yourself in any way that's complicated, or that could result in frustration or someone not really interpreting what you're saying, then you need to actually, at a minimum, pick up your phone and make a phone call, if not actually go and speak in person.
Yeah, no, I agree. The phone is, and texting especially, it's such a terrible way to communicate when emotion is involved at all, or hurt feelings or anything. It's the phone is not good for that. It's good. Sometimes you feel like it's good because you can take time and really type out your thoughts, but sometimes you don't need to be in your own thoughts too much. You really are thinking wrong, and so you really need some time in prayer, and then you need to confront that conversation head on in a healthy way.
And we use it for our cowardice. It's easier to don't be a cowards, man. Don't avoid the confrontation because you can send a text. Be a man. Go and have the conversation that you need to have. You
got me, Joe, right in the heart. Way to go. Way to go. The most dangerous item on the Zoom call is Joe Bernard. All right. Rule number 5, be a digital minimalist. Let's just keep that simple. Be a digital minimalist.
Yeah. What we're talking about, these kind of rules, phones, it's all going to evolve. You can't have just a few things that are going to forever carry you through. I think the better approach to the modern digital age is to realize, make this a part of your identity. Okay, I want to be a minimalist where I can. And the reason is because there are more important things. And as you look at that big picture, who's the man that I want to become? Well, I want to be a man that, again, has friends around me, real friends, real band of brothers. I want to have an ever deepening relationship with my wife. I want to be present and make memories and experience the world and do things, not just, and even when I do things, not just have photos, but be present in the moment. I mean, have that big picture of who you want to be, and then realize that the phone, it's always going to be a potential threat. And so just to think of yourself, okay, I want to be, somebody who's minimalizing its role. It's always going to be there, but to set me up for the more important things. And I think if guys think of themselves in this way, of being a digital minimalist, that's going to help them.
Yeah, it's kind of an identity piece there. I'm the kind of guy who minimizes the digital presence in my life proactively. It's a proactive action that guys are going to take, because I think you're right. If we look at our lives 20 years from now, are we becoming, over those 20 years, have we become closer to the guy that we're headed towards? Hopefully so. But if so, it means that we've still maintained the same fervor with identifying what is the digital presence in my life and how do I keep it in check, because it is going to change. Like, man, technology 20 years from now, I can't even imagine what we're going to be facing. But that means as men, we're going to have to face it head on and say, wait, no, here's some limits. Here's some rules. I'm going to use this minimally. All right. Well, those are 5 great rules, I think, for guys that if you want to be a Jedi with your phone, and I'll list those in the show notes so that you have those printed for you there, guys. But here's what I'd encourage you just to close out with. I know that there's no podcast conversation or even any sermon that's going to convince you to actually change your phone habits, right? Like, we've all heard people tell us, even the creators of these phones and the creators of these social media services, we've heard them tell us, you need to stop using this. And yet we still do it. There's no conversation that's going to change it. So, but what I want you to do then, what you have to do is I want you to identify a new habit that you need to change today. And then the big step is to be explicit about it. See, what most of the time we hear stuff about the habits we need to change with our phone, and we hear it, we're convicted of it, but we don't change anything. And we don't tell anybody about how we're feeling, about what we need to change, because that would be embarrassing to talk about how we use our phones, and we don't want to be held to account for it. So I'm going to ask you to go a step further, guys. I want you to identify a new habit you want to make, and then be explicit with your friends about that habit and have them hold you to account. If you don't know how to do that, if you need a guide for that kind of conversation, a guide for that kind of friendship, go to menneedhelp.org. And we've got CT12 as our program that helps guys to have these kind of conversations, to have this kind of lifestyle where you're explicitly talking about how you want to handle your phone. And you're explicitly having these conversations with friends who also want to handle their phones in a healthy way. You're setting yourselves up for a lifestyle of putting Christ first. So go to menneedhelp.org. You can find this is a simple guide for guys to challenge themselves to a new lifestyle, a new way to handle things like your phone. And then join us next week. We're going to continue talking about training and spiritual fitness.